verses 17 through 26. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was a little less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. Many Jews had come to comfort Martha and Mary after their brother's loss. When Mary heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, while Mary remained in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask God, God will give you." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha replied, "I know that he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Well, I don't know about you, but to me, these little phone things are just amazing. Do you know there's more computing power in this than there was in the whole Apollo spacecraft? Yeah. Ooh, I could go to the moon. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And they couldn't even imagine taking a selfie there, right? I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, in this phone, they're always come up with cool little things to do with them. Like, all right, check this out. All I have to do is flick my wrist, and I can take a picture. I can take a picture. Look, and then I can flick it again, and I can take a selfie with you. I mean, it's just amazing what these little phones can do. And but over the years they get a little older, right? And maybe the battery isn't working as well. They don't last as long. Maybe the memory's not as good, and the apps crash, and then maybe the whole phone crashes, right? But no worries, you can just get an upgrade for a minimal amount of money. Now, what's really wild is that you can have your old phone, and it might have even just completely died these days. Gone, dead, you dropped it in the middle of the lake, done. Ain't never going to find it again. And so you trot down to the local phone store, and you buy a new phone. Well, when you start that thing up, you can download all your old photos and everything right from the cloud. Isn't that amazing? Hold on, I just got a text. I mean, it's just wild how it does it. How you can have all the same pictures and all the same emails and text and really all the same memories on your phone, like that you had in your last phone. You get this pretty unbelievable upgrade in a phone, and still have the same memories and still have the same everything on your phone. Well, as Christians, that's sort of what we believe happens to us, right? And I don't know about you, but I have felt over the years that my battery is starting to die a little bit. It doesn't last quite as long as it used to. Might have an app or two that crashes now and then. But then Jesus tells us, Scripture tells us, that one day we will get this unbelievable upgrade to a new body that doesn't feel pain anymore, that doesn't suffer, that still has the same memories and personality and all that. Because one thing that we do know, right, is that death is a part of life. Death and what? Taxes, right? There you go. Death and taxes. Except some kind of wiggled out of the taxes. But I'm thinking they didn't wiggle out of maybe the other part. You see, that's one of the things that connects all of humanity, right? Is that one day we're all going to die. And that can be kind of scary. It can be kind of scary, especially if you don't really know what's on the other side. And we don't really know what's on the other side, right? I mean, we know what we've read in Scripture and maybe some stories that other people have told us. But at some level, we're kind of trusting God along that pathway, aren't we? We're trusting God to be with us in that next realm. Now, the good news is that the little bit that we've read in the Scripture, and Jesus, honestly, he doesn't talk so much about the by and by, the heaven and the future after we die, and he does allude to it for sure. But he spends much more of his time talking about life here and now, God's kingdom here and now, God's kingdom as we experience it and help others experience it here on earth. That's really where Jesus spent most of his time teaching. But he did talk a little bit about, and other scriptures talk a little bit about heaven. And what does heaven look like? Well, it sounds like it's a big part. Jesus talks about a big wedding party, right? Where everybody's invited. And all you got to do is show up. See, God invites us to this big party with God in the end. Jesus even tells his disciples that one day he looks forward to sharing a meal with them in heaven. The last night that he spent with them, he reminded them that he was going to prepare a place for them so that they would be with Jesus and with God. That Jesus and the Father are one. And that because of what Jesus was about to do, death was not the worst thing to happen. Because of the resurrection, the worst thing to happen is never the last thing, is it? Because of the resurrection, there's life. Because of the resurrection, we don't have to be afraid of death. Now, that's not to say that death isn't a good thing at some level, right? At some level, it kind of keeps us out of trouble, doesn't it? It has me a time or two. Sometimes it hasn't, but that's another story. But where death gets to be a real problem for us, I think, especially as Christians, is that when death controls us, when we get so afraid of that we can't live life to its fullest here and now. We live afraid. We live in a way that we're not really living. Jesus wants us to know that he is life. And that we have life with him because of the resurrection. Paul reminds us that death is an essential process. But that allows our mortality to be swallowed up into life. Paul sees death not as a defeat, but as a victory to where we go and live with God. All right, I want you you do something for me really quick. So pull out your blue hymnal. Turn to page 707. Or hymn 707. The Hymn of Promise. Now this is a beautiful, and Rat probably already knew that off the top of his head, but this is such a beautiful hymn, and it speaks about springtime, and after how a long, cold, harsh winter, we see the signs of new life. And in that, we're reminded of the resurrection. Let's look at verse 3 specifically, because I think it really applies here today. In our end is our beginning. In our time, infinity. In our doubt, there is believing. And in life, eternity. In our death, a resurrection. In the last, a victory. Unrevealed until its season. Something God alone can see. What a blessing that is for us. And Jesus reminds us that we are living that hymn each and every day. And that we don't have to let our lives be controlled by fear of one thing or another, or even death, because of the resurrection. Because the worst thing that happens is never the last thing. Because of Jesus' promise for us. We're reminded of his words to Martha, who was distraught after losing her brother. They were so close. Martha and Mary were so close to Jesus, along with their brother. But their brother had died, and Martha was upset because Jesus hadn't been there to heal him. And Jesus' response to her was, "There is life always in me." I want to remind you of these words that he shared with Martha, but that are true to us today. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this? He asked Martha. Do you believe this? I ask you. Do you believe it enough to where no matter what fear is in our lives, it doesn't control us because of who Christ is and the promise that Christ has for us? Thanks be to God for this promise. And on that last night that he was with his disciples, he reminded them of that promise, even though his death and resurrection hadn't happened yet. He wanted them to know that he would always be with them and challenged them to be bound together by love. He challenges us to do the same thing today. As we're reminded through communion, may we remember Christ's love for us, and may we remember that no matter what happens, the worst thing is never the last thing for a resurrection people.